Good afternoon, everybody, and you are very welcome to IMI's 30-minute webinar on Mastering the Performance Mindset. My name is Julie Ryan, and before we start, I'd like to welcome organisations across the professional services industry, international pharmaceutical, international IT, media and financial services. You're all very, very welcome indeed. Through research and design, the IMI team is bringing a series of pioneering and leading edge programs specifically aimed at senior leaders across industry. One of these is Mastering the Performance Mindset, and we'll be introducing this now to you. We've listened with intent to our customers who place mindset of the leader as absolutely crucial to performance and working in particularly complex environments. Before I introduce you to the programme, and indeed our programme director, I'd like to take you through the schedule, and as you can see, a review of some key dates for this particular 10-week period. We'll kick off with a virtual launch on November the 15th, and this will be followed by and prepare you for a very immersive 2-day on-site here at IMI's campus for the programme, followed by a series of executive coaching, peer coaching and digital nudges that will take place between November and January, when you will return back to campus here. The programme will come to a close and be reviewed on the 30th of January. So with no more delay, I'd love to pass you over to Danica Murphy, who is Programme Director of this pioneering leading edge programme. Danica.
Thanks, Julie. So good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you have a sandwich or something there to keep you engaged during this little overview. We're keeping it quite high level just to give you a sense of what you might expect, but the overall objectives for this next 20-25 minutes is really just to provide some information on the program and to create a little excitement for you, the potential participants. In order to do that, we'll be going through the pillars of the program, the framework, flow, giving a little more meat on the bones of that time schedule that Julie just laid out for you, and just also hearing any questions or inputs that you might have in terms of what's going on in your workplaces that you want to make sure gets incorporated or covered, because very much it's a very iterative, interactive and responsive program for our customers. So I suppose the question that a lot of people have been, actually telling me as opposed to even asking me is we need this topic now. And really the articulation as to why requires very little further explanation than that photo up there. If you're familiar with what's gone on with Elon Musk over the last, 12 weeks really, the whole drop in shareholder confidence and restructuring of the board and a number of things because of these late night tweets and this overwork 24/7. I've got to do everything. I can run on fumes basically, which is interesting because he's a car, the electric car focus, but really this idea that I don't need to recharge, which is, ironic. What came into that conversation after this kind of 24/7, I can't take a break, I'm not sleeping, messaging that was going out from him was Arianna Huffington coming back with some of the science, really saying, Elon, you are a smart guy, you're an innovator, you are a groundbreaker, and you're not following the science. And the science is telling us very quickly that our world has changed. The demands are more intrusive, they are more demanding, they're more rigorous, more complex than they've ever been. And not having charged up batteries to face that is certain failure. And really it's created a very interesting dialogue, I think, in the broader market at the moment. So I think it's very topical, and it really lays the groundwork for what we've been hearing through our own research in what's going on here in Ireland, as well as globally. But in Ireland, I think we can speak quite intelligently, and I'm sure everyone on the webinar can experience it. Things went at a different pace even 7 years ago. So if you think of the pace of change, the uncertainty in the world with, I don't even need to say Brexit and everything else that's going on, multi-locations, matrix reporting, demands, devices, the complexity has gone through the roof. Our systems don't evolve that quickly. If you look at Darwin's research, it takes a long time for our systems to keep up with what's going on. The best thing we can do is have a toolkit, an armory of helps and enablers and tips to help us manage until our systems do stabilize and do catch up in this uncertain time. And that's really what this program is about. It's about making sure that really senior leaders that have to make complex decisions that affect many layers of ultimately human beings are just doing so with the clearest possible mind and the most critical thinking that they can. And that really is what this program is trying to address with all the noise, the background noise that's going on. There's a slide there with a number of learning outcomes, which obviously you can well able to kind of read through. But I suppose really if I were to summarize them for you, the real learning outcomes are around change in your mindset, change in your habits that then follow that mindset, and change in the practices that you bring to life in your workplace to try and still some of the distraction, some of the noise, trying to get focused on the important things and having enough fuel in the tank every single day to succeed at this long race. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And we're finding that the level of burnout, the level of stress-induced days off, the level of, I suppose, pressure-prompted decision-making that's being made simply needs to be addressed. And that's really what some of the learning outcomes of this course are, really to foster your personal balance, making sure that you have a clear purpose for why you would invest time in this. And it's going to be different for every organization and indeed for every individual, but really helping you zero in on that with laser-like focus and follow that focus throughout the program. I suppose the foundation of the program, the three pillars that I mentioned when we started, the program really is aimed at addressing three areas of this. It's such a broad topic that we know the science can take us down a lot of really interesting offshoots. But where the science is strongest, where it's really telling us the most, is in these three areas. It's really telling us about building resilience, making sure that as things change so quickly and you have to make decisions with less information, knowing that you're going to get some wrong, and when you do get them wrong, being able to recalibrate quickly and refocus and reinvent as quickly as you were able to make that original decision. It really focuses on wellness, the idea that if you invested a lot of money in a really nice car this year, and I were to ask you, tell me about the maintenance program for that car, I reckon you could tell me how often you're going to have the oil changed, when you're going to have the tires treads updated, when you're going to, what fuel you're going to use. You would have a really strong maintenance program for that investment to make sure you're getting as much return as you can. We don't seem to view our human system the same way. And this program introduces a lot of really cutting-edge science around sleep, around diet, around exercise, around the types of things in our life that we surround ourselves with and focus on, to really make sure that wellness piece, that return on investment on the machine, if you call this the machine, is going to be realized. The third piece of that, so a resilient mind, a well system, can help us really harness focus. And I think for me, focus is probably where the biggest output from the program is. Clearer minds focus more clearly on the things that are important and really help us distill down, as I mentioned earlier, all the white noise. And I don't know about you, Julie, or anyone else out there, but there is an awful lot of noise in the system, in my world. And so really trying to learn how to filter that out, how to use tools within our reach to minimize our distractions, our constant response to the bing of the phone is really what this is about. And the focus area involves quite a lot of neuroscience. So we're really harnessing on the area and the recent research in the last 8 to 10 years, because we can actually access parts of the brain that we couldn't before, to look at what is the chemical balance of a completely optimized brain. How does it create that focus? And what can we do to create that balance in the brain? So it's not just life balance. We talk about life balance quite a bit. It's actually the chemical balance of the brain. And we actually have so much more control over that than we think we do. And so this is really about looking into some of that and harnessing it for personal gain. On those three themes, I think I've kind of touched on them, but this is really just another way of looking at it, focusing on the things that are important, simplifying our environment to be able to create that resilience, that ability to bounce back and create the confidence around that bounce back. And I think that's really a piece that my really progressive leaders have. They have a bit of courage to make a call without all the data, because they know they have the capability and people around them to retack, remodify, reform when new data does come along and new things are made clear. So that's that self-belief, that resilience piece. And then wellness, that's just the fuel in the tank to keep it going every day. We're now into officially the 100-year life. And I don't know what that looks like for any of us, but I know that it doesn't mean we get to turn the off switch on. We don't get to flip that off switch at any given point. We're probably going to have to stay and want to stay engaged longer, and really looking at what creates some of that brain health and that physical health to keep you enabled to make those decisions for yourself. Really just looking at some of the elements. I mean, I think there's a lot of questions that will get brought up in this course, and I'm really delighted to be able to be the facilitator to explore those along with a panel of global experts in terms of, what is the focus in this time of change and high demand? What are the really good leaders? The leaders in the room who will be your peer cohort, your sounding board, your kind of growth team. What is it that you are really focusing on? So it's as much about learning from this panel of international experts as the esteemed and prestigious experts in the room. And how are leaders building and fostering their capability in this area? And there is really where the science tells us a lot. Really looking at well-being. So we know that wellness is not just the absence of illness. Wellness is a very proactive look, as you would do with the car, really looking compulsively and proactively on creating a system and a format of wellness. So what goes into that, and then the resilience, what's keeping us from resilience, and really looking at how to build that up. So really covering quite deeply in those three areas. To me, what is most impactful about the program, I think the topic is absolutely fascinating. I think the way it will be presented by world-class authors and global experts is absolutely fantastic. But where, for me, the real benefit of the program is the traction creation that the format lays out. The fact that we're really looking at not just a one-hit wonder. It's not coming into a room, listening to some interesting ideas, and then leaving. It's really disrupting your thinking about this stuff. We all think that the habits that have gotten us here, because we have been quite successful. If you're in this room, I would imagine you're a senior role model in your organization. The habits that got you here might not be the ones that get you there. We know that the demand, the language in this whole field has actually changed. Millennials coming into the workplace, actually actively contributing now, have a different requirement. Managing this pace of change just requires a different skill set. So letting go of the things that got you here and adopting new behaviors, new practices, and most importantly, new mindset is really what this program is about. And that doesn't happen in one day. Mm-hmm. It has to happen over time. We have to experiment. We have to throw some stuff out. We have to modify other stuff to personalize it. And this program really allows, I think, that chewing of things, that personalization. And that really is what has me most excited about it, is the investment of time that the IMI has put into it, but also that every participant will have to be putting into it to make sure that they're getting real return on that investment. The time, the way it looks, is a bit of pre-work. So there's a little bit of a sort of a health check, if you will, at the front, which involves a 360, some pre-reading, and just kind of engaging online with the virtual campus. There's then the first 2 days of the program, which are not residential, but they're in the building here together, really stripping away some of those old habits, really looking at the way that each of you approaches resilience, wellness, and focus. What are the barriers that get in your way? What do you want for yourself in these areas? And hearing from those world-class experts, really cutting-edge science. Dr. John Briffa, who's the author of the book, A Great Day at the Office, who really debunks so many of the health myths or little convenient untruths that we've told ourselves over the years, and really gets to the nugget of what is sustainable mental health and physical health to run this marathon. Also, Frederic Fabricius, who is going to be covering the neuroscience of the brain and really using a few assessment tools to look at what is your current chemical makeup based on your responses in your brain? Are you in the right headspace to lead in this crazy time of change? And if not, how can you identify those gaps and build them? So it's a very personal learning journey. And then finally, Dr. Jill Walker, who really focuses on that noise aspect, eliminating that noise and creating new tools and habits to implement immediately. Then goes the application phase. So having all that, armed and dangerous with this interesting information and real shared knowledge of how it applies to you, going out day 3 and putting it into practice and really journaling and keeping track on that virtual form, what's working, what's not, really putting it up to yourself. You'll also have a peer coach, someone from the group, so another senior leader who you'll be able to identify eye to eye on how challenging bringing some of this is, all the excuses we tell ourselves, why you're not doing it today, why it's tomorrow, really kind of help prod each other and really raise the bar of success. My belief is that most of the people in this room, have a really healthy competitive streak. And I think we can harness that in that peer coaching to really make sure we're putting it up to each other and driving each other together forward and using that sounding board. During that time, there's also an interesting opportunity to talk to an external coach. So really taking all that you've been trying and applying and trying not just to do kind of the immediacy action planning, but this is the bigger action planning. This is a slightly higher layer of thinking about how this can impact not just you, but your workplace. So you create the environment that delivers results in your professional environment. So working on you is going to change you and your leadership messaging and your leadership style. We also want to look at the climate that you're creating, the work environment that you're creating. And through the help with an external coach, you'll be able to look at what practices have you ingrained in your work environment that are actually counterintuitive to everything you've learned. How can you really adopt some of this at a broader perspective to have that impact on focused results? Then we have the opportunity to bring it back together again on that day 3, which is a few weeks down the road, and really looking at the so what. So what have you tried? What have you changed? What else? How else can we juggle it? Can we challenge it? What's going to be in the longer term? And interestingly enough, even through some of these conversations, Julie, you'll notice that we have kind of day 1, day 2, day 3, a few blocks of content have moved around even since this early design, based on what we've heard from our experts and our customers in terms of they want the first 2 days really hard hitting. They want a really long gap to try and apply, not too long so we lose focus, but long enough that they get a chance to experiment and measure results.
Yeah.
So having some personal KPIs around it.
Yeah.
And then a day 3 that's really reflective, really coming back and saying, how do I sustain this? And then after that, another opportunity with an external coach to keep the longevity focus, that longer focus alive. So that's the layout, I suppose, of the journey. And again, I think for me as a facilitator and a passionate advocate in this area, I'm probably most excited about the hard-hitting content those first 2 days, and then really watching the learning journey of our participants to see what they're able to bring to life. I mentioned the experts. This is our team of speakers, and I really can't express how honored I am to be able to work so closely with them. They come from various walks of life. So Frederique Fabricius is a neuroscientist who specializes in brain health in organizations. She's written a book called The Leading Brain that really touches on this concept of fear, fun, and focus in the workplace, and that those are not just nice to have. They are critically essential in order to create the right chemical balance in our brain for long-term innovative decision-making. So we've actually been able to tie the decision-making process around innovation to some of her research, which has been fascinating. Dr. John Griffa, who I also mentioned, really around the kind of systemic wellness piece. And then Dr. Jill Walker, really around the distraction and the control that we need to regain from our devices, from our landscape, and making sure that as senior leaders that we're still driving the bus, particularly for ourselves, that we're making the rules about how we can focus, what we want to focus on, as opposed to, I often say we have control of so few things in this world. I don't even control my house pet. We really control very, very little. But the only thing that I know I have 100% control over is what's going on between my ears, the gray matter here. And I think Jill's focus is really around helping us regain that control and unapologetically. And I think that's an interesting aspect because we believe to Elon Musk's example that 24/7 is somehow a good thing. And we need to reframe that narrative. We really need to reframe that dialogue. And that really brings us back to the dates that you mentioned. I suppose now those dates have a little more context to them. So given my earlier layout, there's a welcome session that is really important because it will really help lay some of the groundwork that we probably won't cover again on those first 2 days, really around the virtual campus, the learning journey, the peer coaching framework, things like that that really lay the foundation for each individual's success. Then we get together for those 2 on-site days, as I mentioned, highly interactive, very engaged. Hard-hitting is the word that I really like. Really immersive, really disruptive to really challenging everything that you do and think about in terms of these 3 areas. And then kind of giving some time then to experiment, try some new things, experiment again with those external supports and bringing it back together again. So I suppose the reason again is it is an investment of time. I think the way we've designed it and my overall sort of professional brand on this thing is return on investment. It is all about, you getting the return for that time and the investment that's being made financially, because if we can't deliver that, well, what have we been doing with our time? But that's really where I suppose from my background in kind of professional consulting and psychology, for me, it's all about delivering results. And I think this is one of the things I'm really excited about this program is it's going to have personal KPI and it's going to have that results focus.
Great. Thank you, Danica. And what you've heard is a very immersive, personalized journey that Danica has described, which in essence will disrupt and then reset your thinking, behaviors, and indeed practice that we expect will have a direct impact in your organizations. A couple of questions, Danica, that have come to mind and that have come in. As a senior leader, you mentioned value for time and money, but taking value for time. To what extent will a program like this have an impact on the performance of the organization? A lot of our participants here today are senior leaders. You touched on that, are tasked with writing the current and indeed the next chapter of their organizations. So how can a program like this really deliver that impact?
What we've really done is try to design it around those results. And some of the research that I looked to is really linking focus and wellness around the ability to make strategic decisions. So if we look at some of the research that came from Harvard about 4 years ago on setting vision and strategy for organizations, we know from that research that leaders who are focused on wellness and resilience and who actually practice that focus that we're talking about make decisions about strategy with more innovation mindset as opposed to organic, more of the same mindset. So already we'll start to be able to see a difference in the way that our senior leaders are approaching bravery around strategy. The second impact that I would expect to see, and I think we'll be able to get data around their own organizational engagement scores on this, we just simply know that for environments to stay constructive for employee engagement, and the link between engagement and performance is irrefutable at this point. But those environments have to be rethought. It is more than an employee wellness program. It's more than having a ping pong table in the staff room. It really has to start addressing these fundamental issues around mental resilience. And if we can get that introduced into organizations, we will start to see higher levels of engagement, lower levels of stress-related illness, and those type of absenteeism issues. People who are engaged stay. So I would also expect that we would see at more senior levels, higher levels of engagement that would result in higher retention.
Yes, yeah. And, this program is specifically targeted at senior leaders.
Exactly.
So if you're a senior leader coming into this organization, talk to us a little bit about the power of that peer network, how that peer network can, self-correct itself and challenge itself.
I think so. Your point about senior leaders, this program has to be pitched at the senior leader level because this must cascade down. This can't flow up. It's very difficult for someone at the more junior manager levels to try and influence the way of thinking of their senior leaders. And I think the senior leaders in a program like this have got to bite off what is meaningful for them and introduce that in the workplace. I think part of that biting off because, as I mentioned, the behaviors, like everyone in this room is going to be successful. They have arrived, that their ship has come in, and the direction of the tide is changing. And so the habits and behaviors and mindset that got them here, they need to very quickly be able to learn new methodologies, new tools to navigate the new choppy waters. And I only think it's when you have a peer of folks that you really respect, that you look at and go, the way they think is the way that I think. And you can start to share and challenge habits and be able to say, and what else? And what else can you do? And what are you going to do when this happens? And how are you going to approach these situations by a peer group that you respect and can challenge each other? That to me is where a lot of the traction for the program comes from.
And we will be measuring and tracking both the commitments and the changes that people commit to make in terms of their mindset and how that translates into behaviours. We'll be looking to track that and really giving people a sense of where they are on that journey and how the peer can support that, how the peer network can support that. So there you have it. The Mastering the Performance Mindset programme. We'd love to see you here on campus. And please, if you have any further questions or you would like to hear more about the programme, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you for listening.
Hope to see you.
Bye-bye.